Did you know Elvis sometimes recorded vocals lying flat on the floor during his final sessions? Or that RCA had to dangle a massive cash advance just to get him near a microphone at Graceland? And one of his last recorded songs was a heartbreaking ballad cut right after a major real-life breakup. Number 10. The recording truck basically took over Graceland's driveway. Forget sneaking a small tape recorder into the house. When RCA Records realized Elvis wasn't willing or able to travel to their Nashville studios in early 1976, they decided to bring the studio to him. This wasn't just a few microphones and a mixing board. They dispatched a massive state-of-the-art mobile recording truck. We're talking a semi-trailer-sized vehicle packed with sophisticated recording equipment, the same kind used to record major live concerts or complex location film scores. This behemoth parked right in the Graceland driveway, sometimes for days on end, becoming an unmissable fixture. Thick bundles of cables snaked from the truck across the lawn and into the den, the infamous jungle room connecting the musicians inside the house to the engineers monitoring everything from the cramped confines of the truck. It was a significant logistical undertaking. Imagine the scene. Graceland, the symbol of Elvis's stardom, with this industrial-looking recording hub camped outside. Neighbors, fans lingering at the gates, and Graceland's staff all witnessed this unusual setup. It required dedicated power sources, careful cable routing to avoid damage or interference, and constant communication between the house and the truck via intercom systems. The presence of the truck was a constant, visible reminder of the pressure to produce new material and the extraordinary lengths the record company had to go to capture the King's voice one last time in a studio setting. It wasn't just about convenience. It was a visual symbol of the challenges surrounding these final recordings, bringing the mountain, the studio, to Muhammad, Elvis. The whole operation underlined the fact that these weren't normal recording sessions. They were an exception, dictated entirely by Elvis's reluctance to leave his sanctuary. Number 9. They tried to soundproof the jungle room with rugs. The jungle room, Elvis's den at Graceland, was chosen for the sessions purely for his comfort and convenience acoustically. It was a nightmare. Think about it. A room with high ceilings, hard surfaces, stone walls, tile floors under the shag carpet, large windows and furniture not designed for audio fidelity. Sound waves would bounce around uncontrollably, creating echoes, weird resonances, and generally muddying the recordings. Professional studios are meticulously designed with sound absorption panels, bass traps, and specific geometries to control sound. The jungle room had none of that. Faced with this challenge, the engineers and roadies had to improvise. Fast. Their primary weapon, rugs, lots of rugs. They reportedly laid down extra layers of thick carpeting and hung heavy blankets or rugs on the walls, attempting to absorb some of the reflections and deaden the room's natural reverberation. It was a makeshift, rough and ready approach. Microphones had to be placed very carefully, often close to the instruments, to minimize picking up the room's bad sound. They likely used directional microphones whenever possible to focus on the intended source and reject ambient noise. Despite their best efforts, the room's sonic signature is still audible on the recordings. If you listen closely, a certain liveness or slightly boxy quality that's different from the polished sound of RCA's Nashville studio, it gives the jungle room recordings a unique, raw character, but it definitely wasn't the ideal recording as Nashville Studio B. It speaks volumes about the situation that they opted for comfort over perfect acoustics, battling the room's sound with basic materials like carpets and blankets. Number 8. Elvis wasn't the only one battling health issues during the sessions. While Elvis's declining health is a well-documented and central part of the story of his final years and these sessions, he wasn't the only key figure struggling physically. His longtime producer, Felton Jarvis, was also seriously unwell during this period. Jarvis had been suffering from kidney disease for some time, and by 1976, his condition was severe. He was undergoing regular dialysis treatments, which were draining and time-consuming. Despite his own health battles, Jarvis remained fiercely loyal to Elvis and determined to helm these crucial recording sessions. Imagine the strain, coordinating the complex logistics of the mobile studio, managing the musicians, dealing with RCA's demands, and most challenging of all, coaxing performances out of an often reluctant and unwelly Elvis, all while managing a debilitating personal health crisis. Reports from musicians present suggest Jarvis, though professional, was visibly affected by his illness at times. He needed to schedule sessions around his dialysis, and the long, often unpredictable hours must have been incredibly taxing. This shared struggle, though unspoken, adds another layer of pathos to the Jungle Room sessions. Both the star and his producer were fighting significant health problems, yet they were pushing through to create music together. Jarvis's dedication under such difficult circumstances is remarkable. He knew how important getting new Elvis material was for both Elvis's career and RCA, and he put his own considerable health challenges aside to make it happen. His physical struggles mirrored Elvis's, in a way creating a backdrop of vulnerability against which these final tracks were recorded. Number 7. He sometimes recorded vocals lying down on the floor. This is one of the most startling and poignant details about the Jungle Room sessions. Elvis's stamina and energy levels were often low due to his health issues and lifestyle. Standing for long periods, delivering powerful vocal performances, take after take, was becoming increasingly difficult for him. According to accounts from musicians like guitarist James Burton and pianist David Briggs, as well as engineers present, there were times, particularly during the February 1976 sessions, when Elvis actually lay down on the floor of the Jungle Room to record his vocals. They would position a microphone suspended above him or place it strategically nearby. This wasn't about striking a pose. It was reportedly a practical measure. Lying down might have conserved his energy, or perhaps it helped him control his breathing better when he was feeling weak. It could also have been a way to find a comfortable position while dealing with physical discomfort. Think about the contrast. The dynamic stage performer, known for his electrifying energy, now needing to recline on his own den floor to summon the strength to sing. It highlights the physical toll his health problems were taking. While many vocals were still recorded with him sitting or standing, the fact that lying down was sometimes necessary paints a vivid picture of his condition. It's the determination, both his and the crew's, to capture his voice despite the obstacles. They adapted the recording process to his physical limitations, setting up mics on the floor to ensure the sessions could continue and his unique vocal talent could still be documented. Number 6. RCA had to give Elvis HUGE cash advance to get him to record anything. By late 1975 and early 1976, Elvis's motivation to record new studio material was at a low ebb. He was tired of the grind, resistant to traveling to Nashville or Hollywood studios, and perhaps feeling the creative well running dry RCA Records, however, was desperate for a new Elvis album. His record sales were still significant, and they needed fresh product to meet contractual obligations and market demand. Elvis hadn't recorded any new studio tracks since July 1975 at RCA Hollywood, and before that, December 1973 at Stax in Memphis. The well was truly running dry for the label. Knowing Elvis's reluctance and his leverage, RCA had to make an extraordinary offer to entice him back into recording mode, even if it was just in his own house. They reportedly offered, and Elvis accepted, a very substantial cash advance against future royalties, specifically tied to these new recording sessions. Figures mentioned in various accounts suggest an advance well into six figures, a massive sum for the mid-1970s, just to get him to agree to record a batch of songs at home. This wasn't part of his regular contract. It was a specific, large payment, dangled as bait. This financial incentive caused the power dynamic at play and the label's sheer desperation. They were willing to pay a premium up front, essentially betting that the resulting recordings would be successful enough to recoup the advance and generate profit. It also highlights Elvis's mindset. The promise of a large, immediate cash injection was apparently a key factor in overcoming his inertia and agreeing to the Jungle Room setup in February 1976. Money talked even for the king. Number 5. His piano playing on Blue Eyes, Crying in the Rain was completely spontaneous. Elvis often enjoyed sitting at the piano during downtime in sessions, playing gospel tunes or old favorites. During the February 1976 Jungle Room sessions, this casual noodling led to one of the most simple and affecting recordings of his later career. He sat down at the piano. An electric piano was set up in the den along with the other instruments, and started playing and singing Willie Nelson's recent hit, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. The band members Ronnie Tutt on drums, Jerry Sheff on bass, James Burton on guitar, David Briggs on clavinet, since Elvis was on piano, were initially just listening. But sensing something special was happening, they quietly picked up their instruments and began to join in, creating a delicate, almost ethereal backing. Producer Felton Jarvis, recognizing the magic of the moment, quickly signaled the engineers in the truck to start rolling the tape. The entire recording was essentially captured live, on the spot, with minimal arrangement. Elvis's vocal is intimate and slightly fragile, and his piano playing is simple but heartfelt. It wasn't a song planned for the session. It arose organically from Elvis, just playing something he liked. This spontaneity is rare for major artist recordings, which are usually meticulously planned. The fact that this impromptu performance made it onto the From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee album speaks to its raw emotional power and the unique, informal atmosphere of the Jungle Room sessions. It's a glimpse of Elvis making music almost for himself, captured by chance. Number 4. Microphones were hidden everywhere to capture usable sound. Dealing with the terrible acoustics of the Jungle Room, see Point/Pound 9, forced the engineers to get creative with microphone placement. Standard studio techniques often involve careful placement at specific distances to capture both the direct sound of an instrument and the controlled ambience of the room. In the Jungle Room, the room ambience was the enemy. To combat the echoes and muddy sound, engineers resorted to close miking almost everything. This means placing microphones very near the sound source, right up against the amplifier speaker, close to the drum heads, inches from the acoustic guitar's sound hole, and directly in front of the vocalist. But it went further than that. To capture any usable signal and try to get a sense of the band playing together in that difficult space, they reportedly used a large number of microphones, potentially placing them in unusual spots, perhaps low to the floor, near reflective surfaces to capture specific frequencies, or even trying different types of mics, directional, omnidirectional, in various locations. The goal was to get clean individual tracks for each instrument and vocal that could be salvaged and balanced later during the mixing process. It was less about capturing a perfect room sound and more about damage control, getting isolated signals that weren't completely swamped by the room's poor acoustics. Imagine the den cluttered not just with instruments and musicians, but with mic stands, cables, and microphones positioned in unconventional ways, all part of a desperate technical effort to make professional recordings. Number 3. Getting Elvis to record the last few songs was an uphill battle. The first batch of Jungle Room sessions happened over about a week, in early February 1976. While challenging, they yielded 10 usable master recordings, enough for the album. From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee. However, I ideally wanted more material, perhaps for singles or a future album. They scheduled a second round of sessions back in the Jungle Room for late October 1976. If getting Elvis to record in February was tough, getting him engaged in October was reportedly even harder. His health hadn't improved, and his mood and enthusiasm for recording were apparently lower than ever. Accounts suggest he was often distracted, listless, and unwilling to focus on the task at hand. The musicians would set up wait, and sometimes Elvis wouldn't show up in the den for hours, or when he did, he wasn't in the right frame of mind to sing seriously. Producer Felton Jarvis had to use all his persuasive powers, patience, and understanding of Elvis's psychology to coax even a few performances out of him. Over 2 nights, October 29 to 30, they managed to get just 4 acceptable master recordings completed. It's Easy for You, Way Down, Pledging My Love, and crucially his final studio narrative song, He'll Have to Go. These 4 tracks, combined with some live recordings and leftover tracks from February, would eventually form the Moody Blue album, released in 1977. The difficulty of these October sessions highlights Elvis's deteriorating state and makes the quality of the tracks they did manage to complete, like the energetic Way Down, seem even more remarkable. It was the absolute last time Elvis would record in any kind of studio setting. Number 2. Some of his most famous late vocals were overdubbed much later. While the band tracks for the Jungle Room sessions were laid down live with Elvis often singing a guide vocal, not all the final lead vocals you hear on the records were recorded at the same time. Due to the challenging environment, Elvis's fluctuating energy levels, or simply the desire for a better performance, some lead vocals were overdubbed later. This means Elvis would listen back to the completed instrumental track through headphones and sing the lead vocal part again, recording it onto a separate track. This was a common studio practice, but it was employed significantly during these sessions. Sometimes these vocal overdubs happened shortly after the main session, perhaps the next day. However, for some tracks, particularly from the more difficult October 1976 session, Elvis didn't complete the final vocals at Graceland. For instance, the powerful vocal for Hurt, initially recorded in February, was reportedly finalized with overdubs later. More notably, some sources suggest that vocals for tracks like Moody Blue, the title track of his last studio album, recorded Feb. 76, might have had vocal parts added or punched in replacing small sections weeks or even months after the initial Graceland sessions, possibly at a different location or during brief sessions specifically for fixing vocals. This separation of band recording and final vocal recording allowed Elvis to focus solely on his singing when he felt up to it, without the pressure of the full band waiting. It also allowed engineers to get a cleaner vocal track unaffected by leakage from the instruments in the acoustically challenged jungle room. It slightly contradicts the romantic notion of everything being captured live in the den, revealing the necessary studio craft involved in finishing these recordings. Number 1. He cut a song about a breakup right after breaking up with Linda Thompson. Timing is everything. And sometimes, art painfully mirrors life. During the February 1976 sessions, Elvis recorded a poignant version of the country classic, "She Thinks I Still Care." The lyrics tell the story of a man trying to convince himself and others that he's over a past relationship, even though his actions betray his lingering feelings. Just because I ask a friend about her, just because I rang her number by mistake today, she thinks I still care. What makes this recording particularly resonant and little known in its context is its timing relative to Elvis's personal life. While the exact dates are debated by historians, Elvis's serious relationship with Linda Thompson was experiencing significant strain around this period and would end definitively later in 1976. Some accounts place a major argument or temporary split very close to these February recording dates. Whether it was immediately before, during, or shortly after the recording of this specific song, the emotional subject matter directly reflected the turmoil in his own romantic life. Singing lines about accidental phone calls and lingering attachments while potentially processing the end of a major relationship adds a powerful layer of perceived authenticity and vulnerability to his performance. While Elvis often sang songs of heartbreak, recording this particular song at this particular time feels incredibly pointed. It wasn't written for him, but his delivery feels deeply personal, colored by the real-life drama unfolding away from the microphones. It stands as one of the emotional centerpieces of the Jungle Room sessions, capturing a moment where the King's public art seemed to bleed directly from his private pain.